This Real Agriculture podcast is brought to you by Genesis Fertilizers. Nitrogen fertilizer is your farm's #1 expense. Farmers are working together through Genesis Fertilizers to solve the problem of high prices and security of supply by planning a state-of-the-art nitrogen plant. Security and earnings through ownership is the solution. Visit Genesis today at genesisfertilizers.com to learn more.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin. Welcome to Real Agriculture. Today I'm at the Ontario Agricultural Conference over in Waterloo for this episode, and catching up with Dr. Lee Briese up from North Dakota. Sir, how's it going?
Good. I'm enjoying the trip. It's been nice and warm here lately.
Yeah.
Returned home.
Apparently so. Hey, we're going to talk about practical management for soil health. Your presentation here today, and you talked about a lot of different things, but I think that the first message was really about, soil health principles, and we can do a lot of things, but you need to find out what fits your farm.
Right. That was one of my major messages. Is there's several different applications, there's several different practices, but it really comes down to what fits for an individual farm. And even neighbors will do different things or need different tactics to work on what they're working on.
Yeah. So another thing you talked about is where we can learn on a farm. It's not always good to focus on our top acres. We need to look at our tough acres.
Yeah. So I hear farmers say, "How can I make this acre better?" Well, I think one of the things to realize is the really good acres, it's easier to screw them up than it is to make them better. Yeah. But I think on those challenging acres, the poorly doing acre, there's more potential there for even small changes to make a big difference.
Yeah. And you've said, it's all, you have to ID the problems. And we look around our farm, and you had all kinds of demonstrations and ideas up there of problems, everything from residue management, to drought, to compaction. What are the type of things that farmers need to be looking at?
Well, I think you really need to understand what is it that's causing trouble in those acres, especially on those poor acres. A lot of times it is one or two major issues on those poor acres, and if you can correct that or manage that in a different way, the upside is a lot better.
Yeah. Talk about planning ahead. That was a message that you had for everybody. A lot of things to consider. There's a lot of solutions, but you got to figure out, I guess, what's the ones that you want to use and how to implement, right?
Right. So I think it's really important to identify what you're going after and then think about what you need to do in those steps to do it rather than trying to be reactive. So especially if you're dealing with excess moisture, you have to be ahead of that curve. You can't wait for it to show up because then you have to do reactive things, and it limits the opportunities and the practices you can put in at that stage.
Yeah, and you said thinking about moisture, thinking about clay soils, thinking about your soils, which rolls into compaction. You really need to take a big view of a simple problem sometimes.
Right. If you're in the springtime and it's too wet to plant and you want to use tillage to manage your moisture, well, now you've got compaction going on that. If you've managed your moisture before that time, then it opens up opportunities for you.
Yeah, and there's not one solution. Sometimes there's many. Some are better than others. You really need a list, and you need to think it through.
Yeah, you need to write out what you think can work, what can happen, what can help, and what you can do, what you can accomplish. Do you have the equipment? Do you have the labor? Do you have the time to do these types of things? That's part of it too. That's why these systems are different for every farm. Yeah.
And a big message you had today really was about details. And you're a details guy. Mm-hmm. And if we don't get things done right, if we don't give it the time required, it's not going to work.
Yeah, no, if it doesn't fit your system, if it doesn't fit your cropping system, if it doesn't fit your labor requirements, if it doesn't fit your problem, you shouldn't be surprised if it doesn't help or doesn't work. So it needs to fit the problem, that detail, that the farm's detail, the challenges the farm faces, that whole thing. It has to be specific to each farm and farmer.
Where do we go wrong with details? Maybe a couple of examples, Lee, where we can have the best of intentions, but things can go off the rails if we don't do X.
Right. Well, one of the ones that I point out all the time is residue management, especially if you're going to reduce tillage, because we're using tillage to manage the residue often. And it comes back to the combine or the harvest issue. If you haven't done a good job of spreading that residue, now you have a problem that you're going to have to manage that prevents you from doing less tillage or restricts your opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, you put up a slide here today, you've got a 40-foot header combining, and you've got 20-foot spread on the back coming out the back of the combine. Right. Something's not working here.
Something's not right. Yeah, it's streaking and stripping. It shouldn't look like that. And then when you come back with the planter, it's never going to line up with those strips. So you're never going to be able to adjust your planter for that different amount of residue.
Yeah. You talked about practice. For hockey players, politicians, everything we've got to practice. But if we want to be good stewards from a soil perspective, we need to practice.
Exactly. Anything new or any type of different thing you're trying to do, you have to practice that. And take your time. Do it right. Set yourself up, plan ahead, practice it. And don't be surprised when it doesn't quite work the first time or the second time. Every time you learn how to do it better, then you'll get better as you go.
Yeah. Hey, final thing for you, and you talked to the group today, and you basically said, hey, you challenged this group. Do one thing this year to improve your soil health, change one management thing. What are the tops on your list?
I think one of the things that people can do is really look at how many tillage passes they're doing and how aggressive they're being. And maybe you need that tillage pass because you didn't plan ahead quite far enough yet, but maybe you can reduce that intensity a little bit and help your soils move forward that way.
Yeah. What about compaction? Another thing we can.
Yeah,
if we
absolutely. Stay out of the fields. Like, don't do it when it's wet. We know don't stay out when it's wet. That's a really important thing. And so just try to manage that. And maybe it's rearranging which fields you plant when and changing the timing on that. I know it's challenging and it doesn't always work, but it's definitely something to work on.
Awesome. Hey, great presentation today from Dr. Lee Briese. I encourage everybody to check it out at the Ontario Agricultural Conference website, and we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
This guy has a lot more to say. Check it out, sir. Thank you for stopping by and giving some time for Real Agriculture.
Thanks for the conversation.